mosaic too, we find the Romans including such commonplace subjects as a donkey being brought his dinner. And to lend credibility to a human portrait, the Roman artist located his subject within a tangible setting. Like other land and tradition-bound societies, the Romans had a terrific knack for organization, illustrated here by the complex plan of the Roman Forum. The organization of the Roman Republican government is still a model for modern societies. Their Senate, like ours, consisted of the most learned or influential people in the country. As a ruling body, both the strength and the weakness of the Senate was its capacity to prevent any one person's obtaining strong individual powers. The loyalty of the well-organized and efficient Roman armies also contributed to the stability of the early republic. So did the good judgment the Romans exercised in allowing conquered peoples to maintain their way of life almost completely intact. In the early Republican period, the religion of the Romans, like other aspects of their culture, was essentially earthbound. Here is the Roman goddess of spring, the primavera. Roman religion really amounted to a superstitious nature worship. Here, for example, is Flora, goddess of flowers. The concept of family was also worshipped with elaborate ritual and ceremony. A symbolic national fireside was watched over by Vesta, goddess of the domestic hearth. Here is one of her temples. Since the Romans readily adopted anything that struck their fancy in the customs of the people they conquered, they collected an astounding array of Greek and other Eastern gods during the Republican period. Here is Hercules, translated from the Greek, Heracles. This is a follower of Bacchus, who was the Greek god Dionysus. And here is Aphrodite, whom the Romans called Venus. During the imperial period, after the death of Christ, who is seen here as the Good Shepherd, Christianity began to threaten the personality cult that surrounded the emperor. From that time on, the Roman leaders tried to control religion and make it a tool of the state. But until then, tolerance for foreign religious practices, such as the funeral dance seen here, and tolerance for foreign ideas in general, was a significant virtue of Roman civilization. And in art, the powerful influence of foreigners was never seriously threatened. Notice the Greek style in the symmetry of this first-century Roman work, in the deeply cut draperies on the second-century Roman figures, and in the classical poses in this third-century Roman work. As you will see, time and again, the Romans consciously returned to their acknowledged masters in the field of art and culture, the ancient Greeks. Ancient Rome, the age and its art. Part 2, the creation of an empire. During the 3rd and 2nd centuries before Christ, the Roman armies expanded their conquests and began to bring home exotic booty of every description. The practical Romans developed their culture by capturing it from an earlier civilization. Particularly prized were original works of art from Greece. The Greek immigrants in southern Italy had tried to imitate native Greek art, but they had long been influenced by the primitive, naturalistic art of the Etruscans, seen here. So now genuine Greek masterpieces from Athens became fashionable and were widely sought. A period of intense unrest ensued during the 1st century BC due to three main causes. First, the wealth from abroad served only to make the rich richer. It did nothing to alleviate the plight of the poor. Secondly, it became necessary to hire an army from among the Romans' former enemies because voluntary enlistment didn't provide enough men for the expanded military operations. The third reason for the unrest was the creation of huge country estates and the importation of cheaper and better produce from abroad, both leading to the ruin of the small farmer. To cope with the increasing turmoil, generals rather than aristocrats became more and more powerful public figures. Here is Julius Caesar, the most famous Roman general of all. When Sulla marched on Rome in 88 BC, the preceding decades of restlessness culminated in all-out civil war. 40 years later, Caesar turned the Republic into a dictatorship. He also made history by invading Britain. No real colonization took place in England for the 100 years following, but there are many Roman ruins dating from the 1st century AD on, such as this Roman theater. Hadrian's Wall, separating England and Scotland. Roman baths. And these ruins of a Roman building. When Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, one of the three men who came to power as a triumvirate was Octavian. 17 years later, Octavian was officially handed sole executive powers and was renamed Imperator Augustus, in honor of Augustus's most important achievement, the creation of peace. The Augustan Arapachis altar was erected. Here is the first instance of imperial art being strongly influenced by Greek models. The procession of dignitaries and the regular rhythms of the foreground figures are reminiscent of the Parthenon frieze. Yet there is a profound difference. The Roman figures are real, everyday people. The little boy tugging on his daddy's tunic. The woman telling a chattering couple to hush. These homely little touches in the Roman frieze make the comparable Parthenon frieze seem remote, abstract, and otherworldly. Yet for all their realism, the sculptures on the Arapachis are much more restrained and dignified than the late Hellenistic sculpture which evolved at the end of the Greek era. Indeed, the Arapachis is a perfect reflection of the times. People had confidence in and were proud of their emperor. As conservatives, they look back over their shoulders to the golden age of Greece for artistic ideals. Compare these figures from the Arapachis on the left and the Parthenon on the right. Yet their art also reflected the vivid realism which was the cultural legacy of their Hellenistic and Etruscan ancestors. The Etruscan portrait on the left precedes the Arapachis figure by 3 centuries.